Have you ever heard a story so old it feels like the beginning of time itself? Well, today we're going to dive into one of those. It's a story about a single lie, a lie that literally changed everything.
So here's our game plan. First up, we're going to travel back to a perfect garden to find out where this lie started. Then, we're going to ask a huge question. What actually happens when we die, according to the Bible? After that, we'll look at a really scary idea about God and see if it lines up with His love. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with an incredible promise of real, actual life for every single one of us.
All right, so let's rewind all the way back to the very beginning. Picture this, a perfect, beautiful place called the Garden of Eden. It was the very first home for the very first people, Adam and Eve.
I mean, everything was perfect. Adam and Eve were super happy, and they could talk with God like a friend. But, you know, when things are that good, it can make someone else, well, pretty jealous. That someone was Satan, an angel who had turned against God, and he just couldn't stand seeing them so happy. He wanted to break their friendship with God, whatever it took.
Now, Satan was smart. He knew he couldn't just storm in looking like a bad guy. That would be too obvious. He had to be sly. So he used a disguise, a beautiful talking serpent, something that would get their attention. And he didn't start with an order. He started with a tricky little question, just to plant a tiny seed of doubt in Eve's mind about God.
And this is the moment it all happened. On one side, you have what God said. Super clear, right? If you eat this, you will die. Simple. But then, look what Satan says. It's a flat-out contradiction. You will not surely die. He told them that disobeying God wouldn't lead to death, but would actually make them smarter, like gods themselves.
And, sadly, they fell for it. They chose to believe the lie, but they didn't become gods. Instead, for the very first time, they felt fear. They felt shame. Their eyes were opened, all right, but not to some amazing new life. They were open to their own mistake, and they had just let death into their perfect world.
Okay, so that one little lie, "you will not die," started a huge ripple effect that's still going today. It brings up a massive question. What did God even mean by death? Let's take a look at what the Bible actually says happens when a person dies.
Seriously, think about it. This is probably the biggest question anybody ever asks. And you know what's cool? The Bible doesn't just leave us guessing. It gives a surprisingly simple answer.
The Bible's favorite way to describe death is sleep. Just a deep, quiet sleep. When you're sleeping really soundly, you're not aware of anything, right? You don't know that time is passing. You don't feel anything. Well, according to the Bible, that's what death is like. It's a state of total unconsciousness. No thoughts, no feelings, just rest.
And this idea is all over the place in the Bible. It's not just a one-off thing. The Psalms say the dead are silent, that all their thoughts are gone. The New Testament even points out that a great hero like King David is still asleep in his tomb, not up in heaven. The message is crystal clear. The dead are resting, waiting for a future event called the resurrection.
Now, let's follow that ripple. Because once people started believing that you don't really die, that first lie led to another even bigger story. A story that paints God as this scary, cruel being, which, it turns out, is exactly what Satan wanted all along.
The thinking went something like this. If people don't really die, if they have souls that live forever, then where do the bad souls go? And that's how this idea of a place of endless fire and torment got started, a place where people would suffer forever and ever with no end in sight. And some of these teachings got, well, really dark. I mean, get a load of this quote. It actually suggests that people in heaven would be happier because they could watch other people's suffering. Wow, that's a really tough thing to even wrap your head around. And it makes you wonder what kind of God would set something like that up.
So you have to ask yourself, does that picture match the God you read about in the rest of the Bible? The one who is described as loving, kind, and full of mercy? The two ideas just don't fit together, do they? They feel like complete opposites.
Now compare that scary story to what God actually says about himself. He says, "I take no pleasure in punishment." His number one desire isn't for people to suffer, it's for them to turn away from their mistakes and choose to live. That sounds like a very, very different God, doesn't it?
So here's the bottom line. The Bible paints a super clear picture. God is love. Cruelty? That's Satan's thing. So this whole idea of an eternal torture chamber, it makes God look like a scary tyrant. And that's exactly what Satan wanted from the very beginning, to make people afraid of God instead of loving Him.
But thankfully, that is not where the story ends. The Bible doesn't just get rid of the scary stories, it replaces them with something incredible, a promise full of hope and full of real life.
And here's the beautiful truth. The Bible teaches that we aren't automatically immortal. We don't just live forever no matter what. That ability was lost back in the garden. But, and this is the best part, it's offered to us again as a gift, a completely free gift made possible because of Jesus.
It's actually a pretty simple plan when you lay it out. Step 1 is the problem. Adam's choice let death into the world. Step 2 is the solution. Jesus made it possible for us to have life again. And step 3 is the promise. For anyone who accepts this gift, death is just a temporary sleep before they get woken up to live forever.
And that, right there, is the heart of the Bible's message. The big, amazing hope isn't about our souls floating off somewhere. It's about a future event, the resurrection. A day when Jesus comes back and calls everyone who trusted Him out of the grave, out of that sleep, for a giant family reunion and a life that never, ever ends.
In the end, God's plan completely defeats Satan's lie. This amazing question from the Bible isn't just wishful thinking. It's a victory shout. It's saying, hey, death, you don't win. Oh, grave, you don't get the last word. Because of God's love, death is just a temporary pause. So think about it. How does it change everything to know that death isn't a scary doorway, but just a quiet sleep before the best wake-up call you could ever imagine?